Hello, product people. Welcome to the Product for Product podcast, hosted by Matt Green, data advocate and product manager, and Moshe product leader and author. Our goal is to serve the product community by helping you find products that can help make your work in product management easier. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Product for Product podcast.
Welcome back. We are happy to have Emily Patterson on the show to talk about the tool Jira and how it's used for backlogs and agile boards. Emily is a product leader in InfoSec. How you doing, Emily?
Hey guys, I'm good. How are you?
Doing great.
Hi, Emily. Hi, Matt. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for joining us. And Jira, yes, we got to that episode, right?
Yes. It took us a while, but we got here.
Well, we actually talked about Jira before.
We did.
Yeah. When I think we mentioned it a few times, but there was an episode where we were talking with Martin about that you don't really need product boards. You only need Jira. You remember that? Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Emily, to joining us for this, because I know Jira is like, everyone knows Jira, used it in some time of their career. Although last time we spoke with Wes, who never used Jira. So that was a unicorn for us. I know. We found one.
He was an outlier.
And we know that Jira has this, at least from people I've heard or from my experience, love-hate relationship with it. But we want to hear from you. You know, first of all, tell us about yourself, Emily. You know, who you are, what are you up to, where you're working, etc.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on again. Great to be here and chatting about one of my, honestly, favorite tools. Don't throw tomatoes. Talking about Jira. I've been in technology, working on technology product teams for, I calculated the other day, a whole 15 years. So I've been around the block. I've worked in a bunch of different, usually around like smaller startups between usually around 100 people to 250 people is kind of my sweet spot as far as org size goes. And I work primarily in B2B SaaS. So I have worked in immigration SaaS. I have worked in healthcare and health tech. And most recently, I've been working in cybersecurity. So I'm currently at Fortress Information Security, which is a company, and I'm working on vulnerability management and software bills of materials, primarily to kind of help the grid providers in the United States, the critical infrastructure people, like the people who make sure your lights stay on, right? Make sure those folks have good security controls and they're remediating their vulnerabilities and not getting, ransomware and stuff like that. So that is my day job.
Nice.
But it's funny that you pinged me for this because I've actually been a Jira admin in my past career, actually an Attlasian admin, right? So I did Confluence and Jira administration for several years of my earlier career, and have a lot of experience working in the tool, both, back in the day when it was more on-prem, and now in the cloud, right? And they've made a bunch of changes. So I was thinking I've never used any other tool to manage my backlogs.
There you go.
It's always been Jira. So I unfortunately don't know what I'm missing on the other great tools. I'm sure they're great. But
maybe it's not a bad thing that you don't know what you're missing.
The fish in the fish tank,
Right.
But being on the admin side is actually a very good insight into the tool, because a lot of the stuff is happening by an admin that can configure it and set it up based on how you want to use it. One of my experiences also was implementing it at one of the companies where I worked. And because I implemented it, I was the admin. And after a year, I was like, that's it. I don't want to be an admin anymore. And I gave it to our DevOps. Actually, they were owning this. But I'm sure it gives you a lot of insights into what can be done, what cannot be done. So let's dive in a bit. Why people are so attracted to Jira.
Well, I think Jira is mostly known because they are the market leader, right? They were one of the first entrants onto the market. There's actually a really great how I built this podcast episode with the founder, one of the founders of Attlasian, and he kind of gives. It's a really long episode, so don't try and listen to it. It's like 2 hours. It's a really long one. But I think it gives a really good background on like how they started and when they started, which was very early in the 00s, right? So they had a decent first mover advantage. And there wasn't a lot of, I think, holistic, workflow management tools that were really readily available. And it became the thing that every dev team used. And then it became the thing that all the product managers had to use too, right? Because we're working with our dev teams. And it's only been recently that I've seen a lot more pushes from other competitors. Like I was catching up on episodes of your show before this, and someone mentioned Azure DevOps, right, and how they have now boards and sprint planning and things like that. So I think they just literally were the first people doing it, and they've sort of been riding that wave a little bit, right? That's my take anyway.
Yeah. Perfect. So you saw also the movement from on-premise to cloud, which is much more helpful these days for people, of course. You don't have to get all the computers and whatever to set it up. So let's talk about the currents, the current day. Tell us a bit more about, what you're using with Attlasian, because you also mentioned Confluence. Yep. And I know some people think you have to use Confluence with Jira, but you don't really have to. I mean, they have lots of products, and you can implement, different things and etc. What's your mix?
Yep, absolutely. So my current place is the full thing, right? They even use Bitbucket, which hardly anybody uses Bitbucket anymore. I think we're moving off of Bitbucket soon, but yeah, we have Bitbucket, we've got Confluence, we've got Jira. Most places I worked at have at least 2 out of those 3, right? Confluence and Jira are the main ones. But yeah, you absolutely don't need to use Confluence if you use Jira. Same thing if you use Confluence, you don't really need to use Jira. But they do try to bake it into a little ecosystem. So they would like you to use more tools.
Yeah. And it integrates with so many different things. I mean, Jira, what probably doesn't integrate with Jira at this point?
Yeah, right. That's absolutely true. The integrations are great. And what I think they did really well is the marketplace. You can get a bunch of add-ons, right? Mm-hmm. Other people have built on top of it. So
absolutely.
They made that ecosystem pretty robust.
Yeah. Probably my coffee maker is the only thing that doesn't integrate. So
get a backlog for it.
Let's give it time.
Yeah. So let's talk about the backlog. How do you manage the backlog in Jira?
Yeah, so the backlog functionality is something you can kind of tell, like the Jira product folks have been making a lot of changes to the way that the product functions. It used to be very much just like, here's a list of stuff. And there still very much is just a list of stuff aspect to it, but they have been building a lot more, ways to kind of slice and dice stuff and view things and that sort of stuff. I always use the backlog view of Jira. That's my view. I don't really use the sprint view. So I always have a tab open, one tab open in my Chrome for the backlog. And, I think one of the complaints about Jira, which I will address up front, is that people absolutely can abuse it in ways that are not awesome, whether on purpose or accidentally, right? If you set it up in a way that is maybe not awesome, it can kind of perpetuate some kind of bad habits and things that don't work really well.
Do you have an example?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone who's ever set up the workflow on Jira probably understands the pain points here. Workflows in Jira are it's just a complex piece of the software. It's really difficult to navigate. It's difficult to understand. It's difficult to get it to propagate. And when you're making changes to the workflow, it's easy to say things like, oh yeah, we always want, for example, we always want a ticket to have a tag, we always want a hard stop between dev and QA. We always want, you need to, actually select something in order to move a ticket from dev to QA status. And that's usually where you see it, around the status movement. And what that ends up happening is creating bottlenecks and creating people who find workarounds and people who don't understand that the reason that was put in place in the first place is because the senior engineer wants to put a stop in for code reviews or something like that. People don't understand the logic behind the process change. And then they start creating these really bad habits to get around, the process
patterns and stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
It can really go sideways. And a lot of people end up getting frustrated and, they either change the workflow again, or they, for some reason, put in more process stops.
That's usually what happens. Yes.
Yeah. The complexity gets built up until you basically can't move, and the boards don't move, and nothing.
That's right. And no one can explain it, and the one person that understands it, moves on to another job, and no one knows how to undo it.
Oh yes. Oh my goodness. That is the thing that always happens. Yeah. Right. Because like you said, Moshe, like everyone tries to give away Jira admin responsibility.
Yes.
Just like you did.
Yeah, exactly. Well, luckily, most of the people on the team don't have to set up the workflows, so they don't have that responsibility. That's why it should stay with only one or two people, or really few. And when I did that, my take on that was always, I don't care what you guys are saying. I want to make it simple. Mm-hmm. So I try to take what was out of the box, because they do come with something out of the box, which is very simple. Mm-hmm. And I said, let's try to use that. And then if we really, really need something else, we will change that, because the more we add and make things complex and try the system to tell us what to do based on, different people logic, and it tends to become a beast that doesn't really work for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see it a lot. I have personally seen it a lot in companies where like somebody just doesn't want to talk to someone, so they put in a Jira workflow process. Like, no. Just post in Slack your question or your point, or your, like, did someone do a PR? Like, actually just talk to someone, and you don't have to do that. And it makes life a lot easier for other people, right?
Right. Cool. So one of the things about the backlog that I always had an issue with at Jira was that, well, it actually kind of makes sense, because a backlog in its basic definition is every item has only one priority, and it's in the order where it is on the list.
Yep.
So you can always put things up or down or whatever it is, but there is no hierarchy or anything like that. Yes. But you never really work out of context of other things that happen, or grouping of things, or features, or products and stuff like that. And that's where it becomes a bit more complex sometimes to see things where they in their context versus just in the backlog. So I remember there was no like a tree structure, or at least a one level hierarchy of an epic and stories or stuff like that. And I think it's still the case today, right?
Yeah, so there's an add-on that they have introduced. It used to be in the marketplace, and they have brought it in-house, which seems to be part of the Attlasian product strategy. And it's called Portfolio. And I think it used to be called something else in the marketplace, but it's called Portfolio now. Which
I remember that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
we never implemented it.
Yeah, it gives you the elevated view, and it does allow for cross project efforts a little bit better, which is another kind of drawback of how Jira handles stuff, right? If you're thinking from a product vision, product strategy perspective, it's real hard just to track stuff across the individual dev teams that are working on it. And that add-on is supposed to help with that. And it does a little bit, but again, with everything, if you don't set it up correctly, it's not going to be helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't really want to get into that, because I think this is what we talked about in Martin's episode about how to use that. But there is definitely some challenges over there as well. Now, you said that your life usually is in the backlog, not so much in the Agile board, right?
Yep.
Yeah, but your team does use it, I'm sure, in their development efforts, etc.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, everyone is following the sprint for the most part. But I like what you were saying about the prioritization, though. I have always lived by the code, like your backlog should be in priority order. End of sentence. From top to bottom. And if you want to get mushy somewhere past 50 lines or something, that's fine. But if your most important stuff is not at the top, I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. That's basic blocking and tackling for me. So I am always looking at that piece of it to make sure that the upcoming work is actually where it needs to be and has the right stuff in it, right? Whether it's the right links to other documents or mock-ups or wireframes or anything like that. And just, ensuring my part of the software development piece of it is done, and that the dev team, if for whatever reason they need extra work, that there's something ready for them. And we're not all in a mad scramble at, one day before the sprint starts.
Right.
Has happened, right, for everyone. I'm sure everyone is like, yeah, that happens.
No one wants to admit it, but it happens to
right.
Yeah.
And doesn't matter which tool you're using.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something for another episode, I guess. So what do you do with like quote unquote multiple backlogs? Or I think we used the term in the past. I mentioned in one of the episodes, parking lot.
Parking lot. Yeah, I was going to use that today actually on the call.
Yeah, and other people has other terms for that, or my real backlog and then my other backlog, or the sprint backlog versus the the product backlog versus all the requests I'm getting and I don't have time for, and all of that stuff.
Yes, one of my teams right now has created, so in Jira, it's very clear you create a sprint. They're literally called sprints, right? Out of, usually you're supposed to do it out of elements from your backlog. So your backlog is one big list, and then you create these sprints, quote unquote. That's literally the name. And in Jira terms, a sprint is just another chunk of tickets, another grouping of tickets. And yes, I have seen, one of our teams right now has started carving out Jira sprints that are just placeholders, right? Like things that need to be looked at, or bugs that we have to, a whole category for bugs, which has always driven me crazy, because that does not, for me, allow you to have a nice prioritized backlog, right? If you've got three, again, they're called Jira sprints. I'll just refer to them as Jira sprints so they don't get really confusing with like actual developer sprints. So when you have these 3 Jira sprints in your backlog view on top of your backlog, it does make it very confusing for other people to be able to come in and understand what's the next thing that we're going to work on. And that for me is kind of the thing I always fall back on when I think about backlogs and the purpose of them, right? Is to give people an idea of what we're doing next and just organize the work that way. And if you have a bunch of these Jira sprints, with like parking lot, or needs to be groomed, or needs to be refined, those sorts of things, it in my opinion is very, very confusing, and you will make yourself crazy. You'll make someone crazy.
Gets complicated.
Yeah.
Yes. So do you have like rules about? I remember talking with some people in the past, and they told me if I have a story or a ticket in my backlog for more than a year and no one touched it, I just delete it, because that means no one will ever touch it again. So, do you have rules like that?
That is I love that rule, and I encourage people to do that. I personally have never had the latitude
to do it,
to nuke a bunch of tickets in the backlog, although I wish I had.
We all think about it.
We all think, we all fantasize,
yeah.
It's funny because
right.
I'm more of a collector and a hoarder. Not like a big hoarder, but I like to keep stuff.
Yeah.
And my wife like to purge stuff. So I think she would be very, very useful for me if I, to manage my backlogs, because I'm always like, oh, well, what if someone will ask for it in the future? Right?
That's right.
But I think there is a sense in that, because it's definitely the case. If no one is asking for it again, or no one really cares for it, then why should it just,
live on indefinitely?
And load your backlog for so long.
Yep. But you see it a lot, right? You see all these kind of like, I call them zombie tickets, right? They were created 3 years ago or something. No one's looked at it. No one's touched it. It's in the backlog. But as soon as you delete it, someone's going to ask. And then
that's exactly it. Yeah, that's it. You're like, I threw it away. You threw something away, and then the next thing you know, you need it, and you no longer have it. So.
But that's where, like, to keep the backlog clean and to keep this old stuff, like, not to lose them. That's why I think in the past I had this. I think it was additional project or additional product. I don't remember what it's called exactly in Jira, but I put all the stuff like that over there. And then if I needed to bring it over to the real backlog, I would copy it over.
That's probably a really smart way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that might have been what I call the parking lot, right?
Yeah. I've heard of worse ways to do it. Yeah. It's not very elegant, I will say, right? Jira doesn't, I don't think anyway, Jira doesn't have like an archive function or some other way to say, put this away, but I still want to be able to find it. I was actually just banging my head the other day against the updated advanced search. So I learned Jira when JQL was very much a thing, right? And you had to learn JQL, right? Jira query language for those who have not.
Yeah, I like that. I like the JQL.
I loved JQL, and they have kind of gutted it and moved everything into a GUI-based advanced search.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it doesn't exist anymore?
It works. You can still find it, but it does not function the way that it used to function, right? You used to be able to find everything in your database with JQL, and they've made it a lot harder.
So for the few of you that don't know what the JQL are, either you're new to Jira or you're a unicorn that thought to use Jira, and probably I'm talking here to Wes, but maybe there are a few others. The JQL is like an SQL language that helps you do queries in Jira. Mm-hmm. So in the search, there is like on the bar on the top, you can switch, at least at the time I used Jira, you can switch between JQL or search by, a GUI. And for people that knew how to use it, it's usually very, very strong way to get what you need from Jira, from your tickets, from your stories, from your whatever it is.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's really one of the things that in some of these systems could be challenging. How do you find your old stories if you need to refer to something? We know that once we rely on stories and not on BRDs or long documents, all of your requirements are in those stories, and things change over time. And sometimes you need to refer back to what was developed and stuff like that. So how do you find these things, right?
It makes it very, very hard. Yes, it's very difficult. I use epics a lot. I try really hard to make sure that everything has an epic, because honestly, it's what I've found to be the easiest way to organize and search for things, and just be able to pull up a full list of all of this stuff.
Yeah, and then drill down.
Yeah, and I have seen a lot of people try other ways to do it and struggle bus the whole time. So that's what I've seen is probably the best way to do it. But, I was just, like I said, I was banging my head against the wall on this a couple of days ago. So I was trying to find the closed tickets, like what happened to the stuff that we did, right? I need to report on it. I still need to find it. I need to copy paste something or something, right? And I could not for the life of me find those tickets. They're lost and gone forever. So one of the things that I like to do, and I always share this hack, especially if you use Confluence, is to use the Confluence. They've got a little a feature in the Confluence page where you can add a Jira query. Add one of those Jira queries that pulls all of the tickets you create, and then you can always go to your Confluence page and they will show up there.
Yes. I have done that.
And actually, and one of the features I really liked about Confluence with Jira was that I started my initial document usually in Confluence. And Confluence, again, for people that don't know what it is, it's more of a wiki type of system. But I would say it's similar to like Google, documents, where you have like the Word type of documents, at least to me. But it's really tightly integrated with Jira, which is really nice. And I would start by writing my, high level, very, very high level requirements for the project, for the product, for the feature, whatever it was. And then I would write down like the epics I thought that makes sense, or even stories that I thought make sense. And then there is a feature over there that you can make those into stories in Jira.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to.
I love that feature. That is the best thing they've implemented in the last 5 years was highlight some stuff.
Very useful.
Yep. And then make some tickets out of it. Amazing.
Exactly. So that's something that, a lot of people start with like a Word document or a Google document, and they list all of their thoughts in there or whatever it is. Maybe these days with Miro, you list your thoughts in there, and then you want this to become your stories. And that tight integration was very cool. And I'm sure that there are ways to do that also with some other products, but I don't know if it's as tight as that.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. We had customers that didn't have access to the backlog for obvious reasons, but they still wanted to see a set of tickets. And so I did a JQL query, built a filter, and then I embedded those tickets within a Confluence page, and you can make that Confluence page public to the people. And so that was one use case where having those two applications coupled together so closely, it was really an advantage for us.
Yeah. Just co-sign that 100%, Matt. Just please, everyone out there listening, please do that for your stakeholders. Get them on Jira. They don't want to be in Jira.
Exactly.
That's a very good point. And sometimes we compare other products, and I know Emily, you only used Jira, but Matt recently started using Azure DevOps, and I used Azure DevOps in the last 3 years. And with Azure DevOps, because it's all Microsoft, it's quite integrated with Excel or Word, so you can do similar things over there like that. But a lot of people don't really know it, so you just have to play with this a bit. And I think with Jira is maybe because more people are using it and know about it, then it's much more a known thing out there.
Yeah, and learning the skill of Jira is great because since it is so universally used throughout product, if you learn skills in Jira and even Confluence, those skills are very transferable to other roles. So that is one advantage of Jira's presence in so many companies.
I know I've seen recently a lot of product managers bragging about how they haven't written tickets and they don't go into Jira. It feels like bragging. Maybe it's not bragging. I don't know. Whatever. Sorry. That was a little judgmental, but they're saying that they don't do that. Maybe depends on how you feel about Jira, I guess. But I have, as much as we like to kind of deny it, I think product managers do still get a little bit of shine from knowing these developer tools, right? Or knowing some of this stuff. Like, I at one point used to be in Jenkins a lot, right? And that honestly does get me some mileage in interviews and talking to dev folks and that sort of stuff. So as much as we don't like using, very dev focused tools, very ticketed focused tools, I don't think it's a bad thing, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm like you. That's one of the first tabs I open up. I opened up Jira, now I open up DevOps. One of the first things I look at in the morning, for sure.
Yeah. What about analytics in there? Sorry, Matt, for stealing the question that you usually like to ask.
My favorite word, my magic word.
But specific analytics about how the team is doing and your burn downs and stuff like that. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So I will say this depends heavily on how I will use the word mature. I don't really mean that in like any sort of a judgmental way, but how your team, how much your team has adopted Jira. Maybe that's a better way to phrase it. So if your team is keeping good story points and being very clean with their documentation and their ticket making and their tracking time or whatever, and it's consolidated, the Jira analytics are fantastic, and you can make like a really great dashboard. And then you can just, I've worked at places that just put that, back in the day when we were in offices, would just put that up on a monitor and everyone could see, like how the team is tracking and like, if the bug rate starts spiking or something like that, like, oh, we've got a problem, right?
Yep.
And it can really help, again, the non-dev folks, the non-engineering folks understand what's happening without them getting into the weeds, because stakeholders should not be in that deep in the weeds, right? We don't want stakeholders traipsing through backlogs. It's not ideal.
It's not good.
And so if you're filling out all the stuff and being really good about it, they are absolutely fantastic. However, and this is mostly my recent experience as I worked in kind of smaller teams that, either are not, they didn't adopt all of the features and functionality, or everyone's just been a little, it's not top of mind, or everyone's just so busy, right? That happens a lot. People just get so busy that Jira maintenance is not top of mind, that they don't fill out a lot of those fields. And then the analytics become literally useless.
Yeah. Yep.
If you don't close your sprints on time, if you don't, and you let something roll for a bunch of weeks, or if you're not, updating the points or something like that, it's not worth looking at, to be totally blunt about it. So someone said this yesterday, because I asked my Twitter following, what their big complaints were, and someone literally said like garbage in, garbage out, with any tool. So
that's absolutely right. It's any tool like that.
It all starts with the data.
Mm-hmm. Cool. What about the ease of getting to learn Jira from what you see, like new team members? How easy it is for them to get to know it and start using it?
I mean, I'm really biased because I've been using it for so long, but I tend to think it's relatively easy to pick up. Especially, so the thing I will say is that Attlasian, again, their product strategy seems to be, pulling in a lot more of their marketplace into their core features and functionality, and expanding Jira adoption to more than just software dev teams. You see that a lot. They ask you on startup, like, what kind of a team are you? And they want, they have options now. You don't just have to be an engineering team. And one of the things they did when they kind of started moving into adjacent teams and adjacent markets like that was making like basic ticket creation very easy, right? So you can click in the backlog and make a ticket just from the backlog, and it shows up, it's there, and you still have to go in there and add details and other sort of stuff, but I think it's a lot easier than it used to be. It's more of a 1 or 2 click sort of situation. But again, if you configure stuff in a wonky way, and all of a sudden you have 37 fields you have to complete before you can click that create ticket button, you just messed up your whole team. You kind of messed it up for yourself.
Yes, hopefully no one has 37 fields.
I've seen some stuff, man.
There's probably somebody out there.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, perfect. This is a time in the show where we want to ask you about top 3 best features and top 3 worst features, or things that you would like them to fix. And I think you mentioned a few things, so tell us.
All right. I'll start with the good stuff. And this is, again, very personal preference here. Your Jira mileage may vary, a lot of caveats. Please don't throw tomatoes at me after this gets published and you listen to it. So for me, what I really like is the visibility that it gives, especially into some of the work that the engineers are actually doing. So, one of the things that I think Jira is great about is, linking out to GitHub and linking out to testing suites and allowing you to kind of like follow a trail, if you will, to kind of see how things are going. Like, I really appreciate not having to, log into GitHub and see where certain things are in the process, right? And I also, everyone really appreciates that I don't constantly ping, engineers all the time asking where stuff is in the process, because, I've got a meeting or a report out or something that I'm trying to compile. Yep. So it really helps just facilitate knowledge sharing without necessarily hassling people for status updates, right? I hate that part about product management.
Yeah.
Like, hey, what's your update? Hey, what's your update? Right.
Exactly.
Not my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to just have that, like I was just looking at a thing that I'm working on for my day job. And I was able to see like, oh, there, it's in progress, and I can see there's 2 check-ins in it. Okay, so it is still actively being developed, and I don't have to go, say like, hey, is this the right status, or did you just forget to move it to the next status, right? I don't need to do that. I can just say like, oh, yep, it's, there's check-ins that I can see happening in GitHub. There's active development on it. That's how we're going to characterize it. And I'm not lying. I know that for a fact. Yep. So that is one of the things that I probably my most favorite thing about it is just kind of that visibility you can give. The other thing is, like we were talking about a little bit before, allowing you to really hook it up to other tools that your stakeholders don't have to get into the weeds. I have absolutely been in environments where we have more business focused people who honestly don't understand software engineering in the Jira backlogs, and like that's not great. The engineers don't like it. It makes them feel like
watched.
They're being watched, exactly.
Yeah.
And the business people just frankly don't understand what's going on, and then they get very nervous and upset because they think something's wrong, right?
Yeah.
So just being able to kind of do those reportings and just say like, here's everything in your epic that you care about, stakeholder, and see 50% of them are in progress and 20% of them are in QA and 10% of them or whatever are next up on and you don't have to worry about it. We've got it under control. Just gives people a lot more like confidence because there's things that they can look at.
Yep.
And I am very guilty of PowerPoint roadmaps, right? Where we do a lot of hand waving. I'm there. I totally get it. But actually being able to provide more granularity to internal people, especially about, especially when you get like high pressure situations with sales teams, right? Or strategic efforts that your product marketing team maybe got a little bit over their skis on, over their skates on, and started talking about it. Like, it gives people more confidence to track stuff without mucking around in kind of the day-to-day engineering work. And then the other thing I'll say about it is that the knife cuts both ways on the complexity. On one hand, if you overly complex your workflow, it's a problem. but it absolutely can handle those really robust workflows. So if you are working in a really big organization and you literally have like 3 different QA teams for whatever reason, you can map that into your process.
Yeah.
And you can actually track tickets all the way through, again, assuming people are updating stuff, you can really track it kind of, not necessarily real time, but you can see it moving through. And if, obviously that's going to be too heavy for a little startup that's just, trying to get stuff out the door. But for really large organizations, it is very helpful to be able to see it kind of go through the machine. It makes everyone feel slightly better. Mm-hmm. And then I'd say for the drawbacks, the drawbacks, oh my goodness. We're going to put administration, we're going to put it aside because not a lot of us have to deal with that. And just don't worry about that, everyone. Let your designated Jira admin have to worry about the headaches.
Let them pull their hair out.
Yes.
Well, maybe the fact that you do need an admin because some systems don't really need.
That is so true.
That might be it. That might be it.
Yeah, the whole permissioning and the whole workflow piece, it is a rabbit hole, and you can really go down it. But anyway, putting that aside from just an end user's perspective, it's really hard if you have, so I've always found it really hard to make things hang together when I do more granular vertical slicing of features. When I have a larger thing that we're trying to work on and I'm boiling it down to an MVP and then a V1 and a V2, I've always found it really hard to make sure that those epics are really connected in a solid way so that people can follow it. And a lot of times what ends up happening, right, is you're using the dependencies. They've got links that you can link tickets together, right? So you've got these epics or something with a just enormous amount of links on it, and it can be really confusing.
Oh yeah.
Which I'm sure everyone has seen.
Oh yeah. Been there. Yep.
The other issues are like, honestly, it's a huge app. Load time takes forever. Oh my goodness gracious. If you have a ton of data in there, if you've got a big board, it is not fast. It is slow. I feel so bad for the SREs over at Attlasian sometimes. And then I do really feel like they broke search recently. I'm so upset about it.
That's a really interesting one I wasn't aware of. So
I would not have noticed it, but I literally was trying to find closed tickets and I just could not. Like there's 4 different things that could be closed, right? Could be closed and done, closed completed, closed fixed, closed won't fix.
I wonder what feedback they got. I wonder what feedback drove that change or drove that.
I have so many questions. I feel like they've kind of gutted the more. I feel like they've gutted the experience for people who are more technical in favor of people who are not technical.
Maybe.
Right?
Could
so
be.
like they're trying to sell into sales teams because that's where their growth is or something. So they they made it a little maybe a little too user friendly. Maybe a little too in the wrong ways, right?
Yeah. Why couldn't you have both?
I mean, honestly.
Yeah. So.
We'll have to get a Attlasian PM in here to slug you through it.
Iron that out for us. Yeah, that's a lot of good feedback on Jira. Emily, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Really do appreciate having you on the show. Is there anywhere that people can best reach you? They want to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a reluctant LinkedIn user. You'll find me under Emily Patterson. And I am on Twitter. I'm a pretty active product management Twitter type human. Hope I try to not be too ridiculous on there. Professional. But I'm at EPAT6 EPATT6 on Twitter, and I usually am following people around, right, working with talking a lot with like Jason Knight and some of the other folks on there, which I know he's been on your show. You'll find me. I'm around.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. Thank you, Moshe. Thank you all the listeners. Really do appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.